Royal College of Art with woven textile designs, and I wanted to show you some of my designs from there and then how I've come to arrive with vintage textiles where I'm working now. The fabric you can see on the left is the red textile, was what I produced at the Royal College of Art, which was with silk and with nylon monofilament, but also with phosphorescent yarns. And phosphorescent yarns glow in the dark. I collaborated with Hussein Chalian, who's a British fashion designer, and he loved this textile, and he commissioned me to produce this textile for his catwalk. He painted paper dresses that were put underneath, and then there was my gauze on top of them, and the lights were turned off, and the paper dresses were painted with phosphorescent paint. So you had them glowing, and you had this gauze, and so the dresses kind of glowed in the dark as they were walking on the catwalk. This textile was also purchased by the Wellcome Trust. They had an exhibition on phosphorescent jellyfish and looking how they're luminous in the water. So they commissioned me to produce a textile, a greener version, green and lime yellow. So the reason I'm showing is it's very graphic, it's very more technical in my approach, which connects more with the work that you're doing. And also to show, I don't often show my textiles, I'm usually promoting vintage and antique. So it's nice to show what I also do as well as a designer. The white fabric on the right was a commission for a chateau in France. They wanted like a tulle or a net curtain, but they didn't want it net. They wanted something very papery and transparent, but to also slightly shadow the sunlight. So it's a development of the fabric in the red. It was made with a Japanese paper textile, paper yarn, and with a nylon monofilament warp. So I was looking at technical and natural fibers together. And then these are manipulated by hand after. So they're woven on a power loom, but the threads are moved by hand after just to get the movements lovely like waves, because normally with woven textiles, they're very straight, either horizontal or vertical. And I like breaking that and getting curves happening within the textile. I worked with a trend forecaster, Lee Edelcourt in Paris. And with Lee, I was working as a stylist for magazines and for audiovisuals. I worked on preparing color ranges for her clients, and I also prepared experimental textiles for her trend books. This is just to give you an example. When I still work with color forecasting, and I prepare color palettes for luxury brands and high street fashion brands. This forecast I'm going to show you is when I would go to Premier Vision, which is a textile trade fair in Paris. I'd look at the key themes that were emerging from all the manufacturers, mainly the luxury woven textile manufacturers, and then prepare a report. So this would be inspiration for high street brands, for textile mills. I would always prepare with, as you can see there's an inspiration image. So this forecast was all about chemical utensils, because it had a very chemical feel, and looking at the color palette and how this would be translated into fashion. So I've got a couple of these just to show you how I'd work for forecasting. For example, this spring summer season when I was there, it was dominated by stripes, very much marine stripes. So looking at blue and white, different shades of blue. In the color palette, I look at different proportions, what happens when you add an accent of a dark color or a vibrant color, and to prepare it so it's visually very inspiring and directional as a forecast. Here was looking at checks, again, looking at how this could be translated into fashion. And my inspiration pieces being, all of these are vintage utensils that are from laboratories or with chemical use. Here looking at those beautiful glass flasks that you use when you're doing the experiments on the Bunsen burner, and looking at acid colors, so really contemporary with Stella McCartney's fashion. How the patterns were really vibrant, very graphic, transparent, glass-like. And again, you can see my color palette with Pantone references so that they can be used for industry. This was looking at micro black and white graphic patterns that reminded me of the chemical sheets you get with all the different elements and their symbols, and looking at graphic throughout in fashion with a color palette of black and white, but adding some different shades to it to make it richer. And the last one is very vibrant acidic colors. Again, there were very vibrant stripes that were all irregular rather than having a repeat of the stripe. And this I was presenting with colored chemicals and a really vibrant and graphic stripe story with fashion. So color for me is key part of my work. As I said, I prepare color ranges, exclusive color ranges for high street and luxury brands. They'll give me a brief of what the feel is they're looking, and I'll either work with Pantone references, or I love to work with antique ribbons, fabric swatches, because there's texture. It's more interesting than just a flat Pantone, although sometimes the stage will be creating a color palette like this. I'd give an image to give the mood for the color range with some swatches and then translate it into Pantone. I'm sure you know, but color is so key with design. I remember my print teacher saying to me, actually, it doesn't matter what your print is about. Even if you've printed a picture of a dead horse, if the colors are amazing, it'll sell. So it's color really, it defines a brand. It's very key. It makes it contemporary. And interestingly, I'm hoping you'll see with my vintage and antique textiles, in fact, the colors are amazing with vintage and antique textiles. We all think it's black and white and dusty because we don't see photos from 1830 in color, but actually when you see antique documents, the colors are amazing and very directional for now. Here's another to show you another color range, looking at really gorgeous saturated fashion photo from Vogue Italia and how I translate that, which inspires the collection with different textures, different surfaces, and different tones of color. I was then invited to be a consultant for Lanificio Cerruti. So this is Nino Cerruti in Italy. And I worked with him for over 15 years. His mill is up above Milan in Biella. He was a great master of quality, and no compromise was made with quality. He'd established his fashion and perfume line in Paris, which was exceptionally successful. And in 2001, he sold the brand in Paris for fashion and textiles. And he said, I want to now reinvest in my mill in Italy because I borrowed from the mill that I inherited from my grandparents. And now I want to reinvest and really bring the collections to worldwide recognition. So for him, I would go preparing color ranges, preparing presentations for his clients, and bringing inspiration for I mainly worked on the women's textile collection. And the photo on the right, what you can see are some of the archive books, and he has the most incredible archive. It was a whole level of a whole floor just filled with these huge, fantastic archives from 1901, maybe earlier, to maybe the 60s. And we'd look through the archives to find inspiration and different techniques that we'd then develop for Gucci or Armani or Burberry, whichever client. And it was a wonderful example of how to use antique documents to create contemporary textiles. Now, with textiles, it can be either the fibers. If you're using a new blend, like I showed you with paper, that can make the textile contemporary, or it can be finishing, or it can be laser cut. There's several processes to make a contemporary version of the vintage textile, but the vintage textile is like a springboard for the new design. So this was an important experience, apart from an amazing experience to work with Mr. Cerruti, but looking at how to work from antique to create contemporary textiles for the luxury fashion market. While I was working with Nino, I was invited to create a collection with a mill in India, in Calcutta. I had produced a textile range in France which was purchased by Alexander McQueen and Galliano, amongst other clients. I had a very small collection. Unfortunately, the mill who I worked with, when it came to production, there were problems with production, that because I had a very small collection and it was a very small part of the mill's production, the production didn't go smoothly. The samples were amazing, the orders were amazing. I had then produced textiles in England with a mill in Scotland that were my own designs for various designers. And again, not being on site, there were production problems. The wrong yarns were delivered, the wrong finishing processes were carried out. So this was my last chance. I thought, I'm going to create my own textile collection, and it will be in Calcutta because everything's by hand. Little did I know what can go wrong when it's created by hand, but thinking it will be controlled, production will be controlled in-house. Obviously, I was in London with the production in India. Again, we had amazing orders. The fabric on the right that you can see was in fact a marble print. And this was ordered by Givenchy, who wanted to line the men's coats like a book. Antique books have got this beautiful marble as the dust jacket, the dust cover. No, sorry, the lining inside the books. And they liked the idea that in fact garments would have this marble pattern inside the garments. What they didn't realize, and nor did I realize in production, is that these marble lengths that were all carried out by hand, they weren't printed. They were like baths set up in the middle of farms, which were surrounded by chickens and cows, and it depended on the sunlight, and it depended on the dyes, and it depended on the weather, what we'd get in the end. So it was so unpredictable that was sort of my selling piece, that every single piece is like a unique painting, but actually the colors changed depending on the season, depending on which person was producing it. So it again, it showed me I've got to have a quality control team on site wherever I am, rather than being available, being on site for sampling, but production has so many problems. The fabric on the left I wanted to show, again, produced in Calcutta. What's amazing with this, it's a technique called space dye. Normally it's created where you have your yarns and you print on the yarns so that you get the color disappears and reappears. This fabric is actually reversible. So one side was the black and white, more graphic, and the other was like a khaki and white. And the threads were painted by hand. I mean, the craftsmanship, and it was the finest silk-like hair. The craftsmanship is beyond incredible. And the V&A Victorian Albert Museum purchased and exhibited this in their collection. Once again, for the sampling, the lengths were unbelievably stunning, and the silk is so fine, it felt liquid. It was just magical. However, for production, it varied in the quality and in the color. So when my son was born and I needed to be at home looking after him, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I was in the studio at 2 o'clock every morning working out what they were doing with Calcutta and trying to control. And I was like, this is too stressful. So I decided to continue working with textiles because it's my passion, but to work now just to inspire production and leave the production to others. So now, this was in 2016. I had friends working at Burberry, and I'd understood that they bought antique documents, is what they're called, or antique textile designs, and were very interested to see my collection. So I took my collection and made some superb sales. Just to say, all of the textiles that I show you in this, none of them have been purchased, because whoever purchases designs, they have the right to it. It doesn't get shown to anyone else. But this gives you a feel. So the fabric on the left, what I thought, and I was desperately keen to show you because you're such a graphic team, is this black and white weave is so graphic, contemporary. It's probably 1890s, something like that. It's an antique French ribbon. But the weave structure to get this illusion, a trompe-l'oeil of a ruffle, but it's woven in the textile, is so complicated that I don't know that we could repeat this now. However, it's an amazing document to inspire, and it's the sort of design that luxury brands may buy to try to reproduce a woven textile. A high street brand might buy to then interpret it with print. But they're starting with something that's such a precious, amazing technique and so striking that it's a brilliant way to start the season. On the right, I work also with luxury jewelry companies. They are wanting inspiration for metal. This may be for a pattern on a watch, it may be for jewelry, it may be for bags, if they're making accessories for scarves, but looking at new ways with metal. And this metal piece is an antique piece of tulle, which is a very fine, like gauzy textile. And by hand, all of these metal tape have been threaded through to create the pattern. As you should know or will know, luxury at the moment, I think, is about time. It's having time. I mean, to have this meeting is a luxury, that we have the time, we make the time for a meeting. And I think it's also time to make things beautifully. And craftsmanship takes time. Good work takes time, but that's where we need to be now. We can't just keep churning out quickly, disposable, onto the next. It's really about making lasting, beautiful, interesting, contemporary design on any angle, in my opinion. And these documents or these textiles are about time, the time that someone's taken to produce these, and I'm preserving them so that they last for a longer time. This is an Art Nouveau lace collar, and it's from, I think, like the early 1900s. What I thought was amazing, it looks kind of quite futuristic, although it's so old. It could be quite Star Wars or quite, yeah, futuristic. And a piece like this sold to the fashion house can be then that they would interpret it through laser cutting, or, like I said, through print. But there's so much rich technique and design inspiration in there that it's yeah, a beautiful document to inspire design. On the left, lace originally, before there was photography, would use a technique called a cyanotype to photograph the lace. And this is a form of a cyanotype, which means it's special chemicals put on the paper. It's probably around 1905, this document. The lace is placed on top of it, and then it's put in the sun, and the sun takes the photograph, and that's the way to get a record of the lace pattern. And I think it's an amazing print. It's inspiring. It's so contemporary, but it's amazing that it's from 1905 and a way to record a lace pattern. The textile on the right, which was actually purchased for a hotel and is framed in a hotel, is using a tape. And what was amazing with this document, it has taken someone forever to hand stitch this tape in this exquisite pattern. But I found it still attached to the paper pattern. And I don't know why it was never made into the garment. I don't know why, after weeks and weeks and weeks of work, it still remained on the paper pattern. But it's really then a fragment of time, a snapshot of time of exquisite craftsmanship. And I'm delighted it's framed in a very prestigious hotel. So it's elevated to where it should be. On the left, I show, I often work with vintage and antique print designs. So they're screen print designs. This floral one is from the 1920s. And I don't know if this still happens now, but with screen printing, you'd have a strike off, which means you would print your design with the screen onto paper first, check that the colors are right, check the proportions right, check that the screens are all aligned, and then you print on the textile. And so these strike-offs, so I love to collect and frame, and they also are sold to either for interiors or for fashion, for inspiration for print design. As I said, color is key, and these color swatches, which are silk woven swatches from France, are from 1884. I mean, the colors, as I was saying earlier, the colors are so vibrant and rich, and because they're preserved in a drawer, not used, and then I love the fact it's all the handwriting, all the document, all in French about how they were produced, what the yarns were. And these also have been purchased by a luxury interior company. They're working with their clients today with them to work on colors, and they're going to frame them for an interior project. But it shows you how vibrant and we would think probably these were produced today, but they're not. They're from the 1840s. I chose these specifically for 2x Eliot because, again, I think they're very graphic. The painting on the left is so contemporary. It's so kind of pixelated, modern in its design. So for it to be for that old, I find remarkable. And the print on the right is from the early 1920s. What you can see, the pattern at the top and the bottom is like a jigsaw puzzle. When you're screen printing, you have to have the prints that dovetail inside so you can't see the join. But I thought this is very, very contemporary looking. It's kind of quite camouflage looking, very abstract. And again, very interesting that it's from the 1920s rather than a contemporary work that my clients would be buying from me. These are from 1920s again, and they're colour swatches from a mill with their different colourways. These have been framed by private clients, but again, perfect inspiration for luxury fashion brands, high street fashion brands, because they're so now, it's what we've seen now, very, very saturated colours. With COVID, my work with fashion, well, I think with everyone with fashion was hit very badly through COVID. People weren't buying clothes, people weren't wearing anything different than what was in their cupboards, and I think here interiors became very buoyant. So I started to contact interior companies to either inspire interior designs and also to frame the documents. So on the left, you can see this. This is a book from the 1900s with the samples. Again, you can see such vibrant colors. And I loved the graphic of the stencil numbered and the handwriting, all of that, the human imperfection, the notes. I love all of that with the colors. So I framed a series of these for interior projects. And you can see on the right, this is another framed, which is a jacquard drawing. So that's for a woven textile drawing from the 1880s. Framed because, again, I think they're amazing documents to enjoy and celebrate. So that's where I'm at now, which is working still with fashion, luxury and high street brands, and with interiors and framing beautiful textiles. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
Let's stop share. So now, do you feel there's any connections with how you're working, or did it still feel very abstract for you?
I feel like I have some of those prints on my clothes. How much, like, where do I start my question?
I forget what you, I'm going to work out how.
Yeah, I think it's almost, it's because it's so alien in terms of the kind of the approach to it, albeit the Marco speaks quite similarly about the historic reference and the kind of the tie between historic and contemporary. I'm trying to think how to best frame my question so I don't sound completely moronic. That's the only problem.
That's fine.
Okay, so when you're approached by a fashion house or a client, is it normal that the client will come to you with a specific source of inspiration to kind of start the conversation, or is it a case of you're kind of assessing what's almost missing from what they need? Which way around does it tend to be, and kind of how do you tend to approach that?
So the way I normally work is, if the client's approaching, I would definitely go to their store, look online, have a very good awareness of what their brand is currently like, and then curate a selection of designs from my archive. Ideally, they come to the studio because I have everything at the studio. I can't take it all. But I would then show all sorts of designs, whether it's embroidered, printed, or woven, that would be suitable for their brand, in keeping with the feel of their brand, but also could be slightly out to say, well, had you thought, oh, this technique could work and this complements? That's a way, and there's such a large selection that then they will make an edit and then purchase the designs. When I'm working with people regularly, they might actually, well, the more successful is that the client sends a brief. So they may say, we're now looking at lace and we're looking at gold and we want to look at Art Nouveau poppies, for example. So I then select what I've got that would fulfill the brief, and the best is through images, because whatever they're looking at, it helps me understand the mood of their season. So I don't think, even with the most luxury brands that I've worked with, they don't have a lot of time to go and work with vintage dealers, go looking, and I can be looking for 3 weeks and only find a couple of designs. So it's really a luxury service to then have inspiration brought to them. The team then look at them, the head designer will select, and then they're off and running. So that's the process. And sometimes I can see how the inspirations come through. Sometimes it's more muted. I mean, it's really nice to see. I know it needs to be translated in a much more cost-effective way. As I said, the antique techniques, a lot of them we can't reproduce in a commercial way to be cost-effective. But I can, yes, sometimes they're shelved for a while, so it might come out a few seasons later. But what I find for the team and for the clients I work with is a lot of them say this is the best part of the job, because we're getting completely inspired. We're getting off our screen. We're not looking at something flat that everyone's looking at. We're actually handling a textile. We're looking at the light. We're looking at the techniques. We're learning about it. So I think you lot probably are always on the screen as well. I mean, it gets very flat and everyone's on the screen. And I think the point of difference is actually to be looking at something, handling it, looking at the story. I think that's the point of difference. And I think luxury is also about craftsmanship. The luxury brands will include beautiful craftsmanship, and it's so precious and it needs to be valued. So, but having said that, yes, I also work with high street brands who will buy. It's generally then translated into a print, because that's the quickest, cheapest way to use the inspiration.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that consumer journey, because I would imagine there's just out some of the references that you've shown in the presentation, the commercial viability of reproducing something from a technique perspective versus the visual components of it must be a challenge, because ultimately I would imagine if you've collected them, there's such a huge amount of respect that you have to the process,
yes,
how it's produced, that sometimes the replication of that, or the reproduction of it, doesn't necessarily pay enough respect to the original reference point. I would imagine that's significantly more prevalent in the high street brands, is that they look for kind of like an initial reference, and ultimately their end goal is how do we reproduce this at the lowest possible price. So how much is there where there's a job for you to find a source material for them to be able to physically use versus the idea of replication?
Mine is much more a springboard for inspiration.
Okay.
High street brands can buy something that's extremely complex looking, but they'll then find how they translate it. So they're not asking me, I mean, even a color range to produce exactly the intensity or richness of a color range that I'm giving, that also often gets lost in translation, depending on budget. And I'm sure you'll know with color, if you diminish the shade and you diminish the saturation and you make too many compromises, it's lost the magic. I mean, color, if we think about Yves Klein Blue, the reason why it's amazing, it is so intense, it is so rich, it's so magical. If you were to dilute it and flatten it, and then it's not going to be magic anymore. So that's also a frustration. But I think unless you start with something that you're really excited about, if you start with a boring palette, the collection can only be boring. If you start with something you're excited about, and if you can be as demanding as possible, then the final piece will be rich and have that energy of whatever your inspiration was.
I'm not going to hog the questions. Did you work out a phrase in? You might have to come closer to this. Can you hear it if Alex speaks at the back? Hold on.
Yep. Can you hear me? Thank you so much, Sophie. That was so interesting. I just wondered, actually, you said that most of the brands sort of take its inspiration and then adapt. Do you ever get brands who are just like enthralled by a piece of fabric and just want to buy the design outright and like own it, you know, exclusively?
They all own them exclusively.
Oh, they do, okay.
So I can't, no one's allowed to take photographs, no one can take cuttings. When anyone, that's why I'm saying all the designs I've shown you today, if they've been bought to be framed for clients, they're happy for me to show. But any of the designs I've sold to my fashion or other interior clients for design purposes, that they have that's theirs.
Right, okay, so it's everything is a one-off essentially.
Every one-off, and they will get all the stock that I have. If I found a length with an amazing, they get the length. If I get a small print, they get the print. I can't sell it to anyone else. No one else gets to see it after it's been purchased. And on the last couple of meetings, what's been quite nice, this has been in Paris, some of my clients have purchased them and said, we're going to frame them. We absolutely love these. We're going to frame them. I was like, I love that. Love that. Then everyone's going to get to enjoy it. It's being elevated where it should. Even nicer if they use it for design inspiration, but to have it framed shows, yeah, I think that's great too.
So I've got 3 questions actually. Hopefully they're easy ones. You showed the reference you showed of the kind of the very graphic textile, which was kind of replicating the ruffle.
Yes.
I can't get my head around that. Like, is that a picture of? I can't remember.
It looked like a thread.
I really can't.
Yeah. On top of to hold it in place, but I don't know if that is what it was.
Yes. So it's actually, do you know what jacquard weave means?
No.
Okay. When you're weaving, you have your yarns that are going horizontal and vertical.
Hmm.
If it's jacquard, it means you can actually, in fact, the jacquard loom was the first loom that led to the computer, because you have a grid and every single thread will behave differently. So that's why you could weave a flower rather than just up and down, because you can lift each thread individually. And it was the computer, because it's all pixelated and broken right down.
Wow.
That ribbon was actually, through this weaving process, the black thread is woven in and out to look like it's a ruffle, but actually it's just a flat.
Yeah, it's crazy. How old was that?
So that's like 1890s French ribbon. I mean, it's actually, I've kept that one, and that's my business card. I printed it because I just
Actually quite beautiful inspiration for a typeface.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you know if that would have been done manually, as in by hand?
It would have been on a power loom, the way that, but it's just such a, we wouldn't be able to produce it, I don't think, today.
It seems though, from what it looked like, obviously I'm closer to the screen, is that it looked a little bit like the thread, I'm going to butcher the terminology, but the threads were sitting on top, but it was held in place almost like staples holding it on the top surface. Yes, so it's not staples. It's the threads on the ground cloth. Actually, each thread holds it in a different position. That's what I meant. Is though it looked almost as though the equivalent of if you had a cable and stapled on top of it. That's right. That's right. So the threads actually hold it, and I mean that's it. You just also think a textile like that could be interpreted in so many ways. I mean, it would be amazing for a branding packaging. It's great for my business card because I love it. It would be an amazing laser cut inspiration. It's a great print design. So one incredible technique, beautifully executed, is so inspirational for so many different. It could be strapped for a bag. I mean, it's just so many, so much inspiration. Just one question. At what point does something become a replication of what already pre-exists versus an interpretation? Because in some ways, you can obviously, with a lot of the things that you've shown, they act as a springboard. But I know when you look at high street brands and like these mass production houses like Zara and those kind of companies, it's almost that what they've done is they replicate something as opposed to using it for inspiration. So how much of the work you do you see that people have tried to reproduce something that pre-exists? And what are the legalities of that in terms of using something either as inspiration or really the foundations of an entire collection? With legalities like copyright, anything that's over 100 years old, there is no copyright. Okay.
anything before 1926, there won't be copyright. If some of the clients that I work with, luxury brands in Paris, they've clarified that if they change it by 30%, then there's no problems with copyright issues. So they could even use contemporary designs. I don't quite know how you change something by 30%. I don't know if that's scale, if that's color, if that's composition, but it then means there's not the copyright issue. But with what I'm selling, I don't have copyright. I can't contact the mills who produce these. I don't even know if they exist. So I'm not selling as a copyright. I'm selling purely as inspiration of a document that no one else, as I know, has it. If there's another part of that black and white ribbon in America, I have no idea. But the only bit I've found. So I'm really work with people as inspiration rather than saying you can copy this 100%. I've got the copyright, because I don't have that. I don't know how that works.
That's right. No, but actually, weirdly, my weird question is slightly linked to that. So, the mill you worked at in Italy, and you were talking about the archive, the amazing archive they had from like 1901 to 1960. As you were sort of talking about that, I was kind of wondering, like, when you're creating textile in 1901, essentially that's kind of like material innovation in a way, right? Because there's probably nothing that was coming pre that as a sort of reference point.
Yes.
And now what you're getting people referencing back to material innovation, but maybe not innovating themselves with a new material in a way. I might be wrong with that. So I suppose my question was that how many sort of cycles of reference do you get before you have to start actually innovating material again in a way?
Well, the beauty with a mill that has a reference, like I showed you with the library, is that because all those fabrics have been produced in that mill, they can produce them again. The mill, Cerutti, is a woolen mill, so everything was made from wool. And if you go to Lyon, it'll be a silk mill. So the beauty is that if you're going to select a design from their archive, they have produced it, so they will be able to produce it again, we think, unless the special loom's been sold. But as I was saying earlier, there would then be the yarn. I mean, a lot of the wool fabric, if you think from the war, they're very heavy. We don't want those heavy, big coats anymore. So if there was a design that was stunning that a client would want to develop, we then say, why don't we mix a bit of cashmere, make a lot lighter wool? We're going to maybe do a different finishing to make it more felted. So it would be contemporary in the final product, but the design could have been inspiration. So it wouldn't, there's no point in repeating that woolen coat from 1901. We've progressed. We want much lighter clothes. We don't want heavy blankets that we're wearing. So it will always evolve, but it gives a springboard. And also most designers would be, now I want the scale enormous. I want that check, although it looks tiny, we're going to blow it up and we're going to mix it with some stripes, so that it would just be a starting point, and then they would, but it gives something to start rather than just looking on the screen or getting a tear sheet from a magazine. You're working something that you can feel and you think, yes, this is the direction, and now how will we go with it?
Amazing. My last question was, I was curious to know kind of like what sparked the passion for textiles for you? Did that come back from like a sort of real childhood thing, or was it something that came out when you went to kind of art school?
No, I've always been obsessed with textiles. My mum works with interiors, and I'm Australian, if you hadn't gathered. She has always had a beautiful textiles from around the world, but more for interiors. I kind of avoided interiors because I thought that's mum's field. I'll stick with fashion. But always loved textiles, was making costume from tiny. When I went to Central St. Martin's, though, I said to them, I'm going to be going into fashion. That's my field. And at the end of the foundation year, the tutor said, but you're not drawing any dresses. You're just weaving all the time, and you're printing and you're doing textiles. I said, no, it's fashion. She said, no, you go and you're into textiles. So I went and designed textiles for fashion. But yes, that's always been obsessed with textiles, and that's what's been lovely with Marco. He's sharing the passion. So the two of us, in between our preparing for this Zoom, have been sharing different discoveries we've made with textiles, how we love them, and that's you get really addicted to it. You like it. It's so exciting.
Is there a colour that really speaks to you at the moment? Like, and does your love for a specific colour or shade, does it come in and out? Do you change your perspective? It might be, I don't know if it's this colour behind you, and that changes every month depending on how you're feeling.
No, I love. No, like I said, I love Eve Klein blue. I mean, you add that to any color palette, it suddenly lifts it. I love Bottega Veneta green. That apple green. Doesn't even matter what the design of the bag looks like. The green is so, everything can be dowdy, and suddenly that apple green just lifts it. I love playing with color. Of course, here I'm sitting in black, which I'm normally sitting in black, but all the energy goes on the work. But just mixing colors, playing with them, trying different tones and seeing what lifts and what makes you look at it, take a second look, like, why does that shouldn't work, but it works so well. I love. But yes, at home, we're quite muted. There's white walls, very beautiful grey carpet, and yeah, I love sort of pinks and reds.
What's the most interesting thing, I can't think of another word, thing or output that your work has ended up inspiring to be made? Does that make sense?
I mean, I think wherever it goes, if I'm seeing on the catwalk that I can see the design made into a dress, or I can see going to the hotel and seeing my pieces framed, to me, that's just both I find super exciting. And like I said, in fact, I was contacted last year by a watch company from America, and they said, oh, we want your print designs on our watch faces, and we want you to do the color range for the watch straps and for watch faces. And that was also like a really nice looking then. I mean, generally, I would probably think I wouldn't put a print on a watch face. I think you need to read the time on the watch. You don't need the print. But how could you design a print that worked, but also meant that you could read the time?
It's interesting, actually, because watch design, like especially for Rolex, when you think of, they used to do a lot more kind of research into special stone dials that they used to do that came out of Italy. And I've shown a few to Marco in the past. I can't remember exactly what the collection's called. It's really interesting, kind of like, I don't even know how to do it justice when I talk about it. Do you remember I showed you?
Yeah.
They're these really vibrant kind of like stone dials, which you don't really see as much anymore, because I guess the market wants something a little bit more subdued and easy to kind of wear.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the nice thing with the watch, I had to take my watch today to get repaired. Otherwise, I always have the battery's gone, so I had to go and get it repaired. But the nice thing with a watch is you tend to buy a watch for life. So it's not something that you're changing all the time, so that you can put the time into making beautiful stones or beautiful prints or beautiful colors. Although I know most of you probably don't wear watches because everyone's looking at their phone for the time, but it's great to have the watch.
I just found it's called the Stellar dials.
Okay.
They did all of these incredibly colourful, beautiful stones that they sourced in very limited runs. I've always wanted to buy one, but they're so crazy expensive. Like,
oh, one day again. For life. And every time you look at the time, you're enjoying that look. And I don't want a digital watch telling me when there's emails coming in. I'll decide when I'm looking, but I want the watch.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. It's incredible. Everyone knows how much I love your work, so I just wanted to state that once again. I'm just really interested because I studied fashion design, and I remember when I was really young, along the journey, I discovered the beauty of research. And all of a sudden, I just found out that the peak creativity moment I was having was when I was researching. And all of a sudden, I couldn't design anymore. So I'm so interested because you do both. You do research, but also you design. So where does the Sophie researcher stops and when does the Sophie designer starts? Or what's the dialogue in between?
Well, now, like I said, with all the production problems, I've stepped away. I may go back to designing, but now it's mainly the research and then to give to design houses And there's a part of me that would like to see the development, because I like the black and white ribbon that you're all excited about. I also think, gosh, we could design so many amazing things. But I'm going to wait a little bit before I then go back to designing, and then see whether I do it in England where I could control production. But to be a designer, if you're going to be a woven textile designer, which is my specialty, you need to be prolific and churn out designs. And most designers might be churning out 10 designs a day. It would take me all week to perfect 2 designs. So it was never cost effective. That's why I thought, oh, well, then I'll design lengths of the fabric, and then that can be a way to finance the studio. But yes, I think at the moment, just the inspiration, I'm planning, I will be setting up an online shop with framed pieces, and maybe showing in some fairs. I wanted to have a gallery and have a selling exhibition, and I'm putting, I suppose, the creative into framing beautiful pieces as kind of, it's not designing, but it is framing, working out, and spending a lot of time curating a beautiful selection without any production problems. I really got burnt with that. So yeah, I'm sticking with the research for the time being. I think what I was thinking also with relation to 2 Times Elliot, and noticed Virgil Abloh's was following you, is on his Instagram, when he was around, all his references were actually were traditional art. So it was always a reference to a Rothko or for an architecture, and I thought it's quite obviously his design was so contemporary and edgy, but his knowledge, or whoever was managing his Instagram, was always references. My son, who's studying graphics, and if I go to the Tate Modern, he's sort of, I'm bored, and I will just look at what Virgil was always relating to. It would be a Rothko, it might be a Pollock, it might be the energy from the art. It's not disconnected. And that's what I feel the same with the vintage and antique textiles. They're not disconnected. Everyone thinks they're going to be dusty and old doilies and completely boring, but it's not. It's completely rich with inspiration.
Your perspective is interesting, because I would say the majority of the younger generation looked at a lot of the work that Virgil was doing and just thought that it was duplicates of other things that they'd seen. But actually, it's absolutely exceptional being able to connect kind of historic reference, and how that was then relevant to a contemporary audience. So again, question marks over maybe some of the outputs, but his ability to be able to weave the connection between historic and contemporary was fantastic.
Yeah. And I think it makes the product rich, even if you don't see the thread. Mm-hmm. I think that knowledge and that appreciation and that focusing your eye always, and it just enriches whatever you're working on, rather than just so flat.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. It's going to be a couple of weeks until we get this online. We have a few kind of in the backlog.
Thanks again. Thanks for asking me, and thank you, Marco, for your patience.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.